Hello and welcome to this training video in all the graph features that are available in ShareScope Plus and ShareScope Pro. I'm going to start off by double clicking on the top bar of this chart so I can open it up into full screen. I'm now going to go through basically all the options that are available in the program. You can get the full list by simply right clicking on the chart. Top options are the same as always. You can change a list, change a window you're on, but we're not interested in these. We start off with moving averages. Click on moving averages and a window will open up giving you access to up to 8 moving averages. At the moment only one is currently displayed on the chart. It's a 200 period exponential moving average. We can edit the moving average by simply hitting the edit button on the right hand side, so we can change this from 200 to 100 for example, and click on OK. If you want to add an extra moving average, just tick any one of these options and then press the edit button to change the thickness, change the type and the period of a moving average. We can add ribbons or channels, so under channels you'll find Bollinger Bands, envelope, Stark or Keltner bands. We'll do a 2 standard deviation Bollinger Band on this, and here's the moving average that we've just added. I'm just going to remove these moving averages so the graph doesn't get too cluttered as I go through the other features. Next on the list is trend lines. So click on trend lines. This is a simple linear regression line. We tick trend line and confidence lines. I'll make this a little darker, otherwise we won't be able to see it. And hit preview to see it on the chart. So although the trend line will always draw from left to right on the chart, infinitely in the past and infinitely into the future, at the moment the trend is calculated using the most recent 250 periods. In this case this is a daily chart, so it's 250 days. We can change the option to do a trend of displayed data. If we do that, the trend will be calculated using all the data that you can see on the chart at this moment in time. So if I zoom into the chart, I'll remove this warning message. It now recalculates a trend line using only the data that we can see on the chart at this moment in time. So it will always be a trend of the data that's displayed. The other option is to do the trend of all the data. So regardless of how much you zoom in or out, it will always calculate the trend based upon the entire history of the stock. If you want to then disable the trend line entirely, just uncheck trend line, uncheck confidence lines, click on OK, and the trend line will disappear. Next is other main graph features. Here are all features other than moving averages and trend lines that appear on the main chart, so not as indicators below it. First is pivot points. And then we have swing charts. Now, swing charts are based upon Mark Riverland's book, Mark Riverland on Swing Trading. There is a extensive help in ShareScope, but I would highly recommend you read the actual book on which this system is based on, because it is a very interesting system, but fairly complex, so it does take a while to actually understand it in full. The next one down is a zigzag chart, which is a good way of smoothing the chart. In this case, it ignores, we've set it to a 10% value, meaning that you only have a change in either up or downswing once a price has moved by at least 10%. Everything smaller than 10% is ignored. It's a great way of seeing where the share price is moving and eliminating all the noise that happens in between movements. Again, go back into the dialog box, uncheck Show Zigzag, and it'll disappear. Next one is Parabolic SAR, which if you're familiar with, You can see the options here to set it up. Again, you can hit on the help button to see the full details of exactly how this is calculated and how you can use it then for investment. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail here because it's beyond the scope of this training video. Next we have Ichimoku Charts and price donking channels. Now again, Ichimoku Charts are a type of chart indicator devised by the Japanese. Again, this looks a little crazy, but if you zoom it in, it's built using 5 different lines. Again, I'm not going to go and explain exactly how this works at the moment. Again, uncheck and it'll disable the Ichimoku chart. I'm going to go through the rest fairly quickly. So we've got price and donking channels, events. Now, events will mark on the chart particular events. So this isn't really about technical analysis, more about financial information. So things like when the ex-dividends date were, when the annual general meeting of the company was, results announcements, and other important dates. If we select which dates we want to display on the chart and click on OK, the dates will appear here at the bottom. Hover over one of the little indicators and a pop-up will appear displaying exactly what that marker is representing. Again, go back in to disable the feature. Next is Candlestick Patterns. This is going to mark on the chart any one of the candlestick patterns you can choose. So you have all the traditional bullish and bearish patterns. Just check or uncheck the ones that you want displayed on the chart and they will be displayed. We then have political and economic data. We can display on the chart, for example, information about who was the UK Prime Minister, the US President, who was the Bank of England Governor at the time on the chart. So, for example, we can see that from here to here, the US President was Bill Clinton, then George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and the colouring is actually based around what party the President or Prime Minister was from. Again, uncheck and we can display. Next down the list is volume profile chart. This shows, there we go, a profile of volume based on price. So instead of being a time-based volume, i.e. a volume bar for every day or every week, depending on the type of chart we set up, this is a volume bar for every day that the share has closed at a particular price level. And the price level is the one encompassed by the actual vertical area of the bar. We can show how many we can set how many bars we want. So in this case, the total, the difference between the lowest price and the highest price of a share is divided into 20 bars, and then the total volume for each price level is added up to then display on the chart. We can do anything from, if we want 50 bars or to just 10 bars. Again, I won't go into the full details here, but you can hit the help button for further information. And next are ShareScript indicators and ShareScript studies. Selecting ShareScript indicators here will use the same scripts that are displayed as indicators below the chart, but instead of being added below the chart, they'll be added on the main chart. ShareScript studies is another type of script that actually draws things on the chart. So it might mark with arrows where moving averages have crossed or various other things. If you click on the script option, you can hit add. There'll be a list of default scripts that come with a program, but simply press script library to access our online library of scripts. And last but not least, we have stop losses. So you can set a stop loss on the chart. Stop loss this share allows you to set individual stop losses for each share. So you can set a 5% stop loss on a particular stock and a 10% stop loss on another. Stop loss global just adds the same stop loss line on every stock. So you don't have to go and individually set it up. Next on our list is add indicator. Now here, I'm not going to go through the full list because it's pretty long, but they do essentially the same thing. You select the type of indicator you want. A dialog box will open up which will allow you to set the properties of that indicator. In this case, it's an RSI. We can choose the color of the line that's going to be used. And we click on OK, and the indicator will be added at the bottom of the chart. We can expand this or contract this, and we can remove it by hitting the X in the corner. And again, one of the options is ShareScript indicator, which again will allow you to create your own indicators or download one from our huge online library. Add market graph. Now these are indicators, they still appear below the chart, but instead of being based upon data of a chart of a share that you're currently displaying, in this case Barclays, it will be calculated based upon a list of shares. So in this case, for example, I can choose a FTSE 100, and it will then calculate and display below the chart. This means because it's a market graph, a changing chart will not change the indicator itself, because this is based upon, again, the FTSE 100 list, not on Unilever in this case. Lines and text. Here is where you find all things that you can manually draw on the chart. So you can draw a line, add a text box, draw a shape like arrows or circles to highlight particular areas, and other things, for example, Fibonacci retracements, Gann angles, etc. Again, I won't go through a full list here, but again, search for help if you're looking for explanation on particular options. I'll just take one at random to quickly show you. We select Fibonacci retracement, for example, draw the line from A to B, and voila. If we want to make changes to the way that Fibonacci retracement is displayed, just double click on the retracement line and the options window will open up, so we can change a color, make it something a little bit more visible. There we go, and set up various other options. There's a tick box here, and this will appear on anything that you draw, so lines and text boxes, an option called Set as Default. If you tick this before you click on OK, all further Fibonacci retracements or text boxes will have the options that you've just selected. So in this case, I've changed the line from red to blue. That means that if I draw a Fibonacci retracement again, it will automatically appear as a blue line. Next is log scale. This is just a binary option. You either activate it or you deactivate it. It's fairly obvious if we look at a very long history of a stock. This is not active, so it's a linear scale. If we click, it will activate a logarithmic scale, so based upon percentage movement instead of absolute movement. And again, uncheck the option to go back to a linear scale. Invert scale. Now this is probably less interesting on shares as it is with foreign exchange, but if you click on it, it will do exactly what it says. It will invert the chart. It's quite useful on forex pairs, because if you take for example the pound dollar, if you select invert scale, the chart will become a dollar pound chart. Crosshair will toggle the crosshair. We've got that already active, as you can see, and we can disable it entirely, so there'll be no crosshair when you're moving around. Or you can also add information on the crosshair itself. So I'm activating date at cursor, share analytic value at date, and value at cursor. If we switch these on, you'll see now that Crosshair has got three values. Value at the bottom is the date of where the mouse is pointing. The value at the top is the close price on that day plus the change. And the value at the center of a crosshair is just simply where the cross of a crosshair is pointing, the price. So it's not related to the price of a share itself, simply what that point on the chart was. Limit date range. This allows us to set a fixed range on the chart. By default, this is going to show you, the chart will always show you the entire history of a stock. You can zoom in and zoom out, but if you go to limit date range, set the date range and set it to previous 12 months, that looks fine. Now, changing chart, it will always default to the 12 months. I can still double click to zoom out or click and drag to zoom in. If I change the share, move to a different stock, it will default to the 12 months. Right click, show future. This allows us to set a certain amount of future at the end of a chart, so the end of a line doesn't bump against the right hand margin of the graph itself. If you go to show future settings, we can set it, at the moment it's set to 5% of a chart. I can set it to a fixed number of days, weeks, months or years, or I can make it a bit larger by setting it to 15% of a chart is going to be blank. There we go. It's quite useful if you're drawing lines that you want to extend into the future. Next is graph design. Now I've done a different video that will go into the options in graph design into I'll talk about these into in a lot of detail, so I'm not going to go through here, but this is where you set up the general options about what the graph actually looks like. So the type of chart you're using, background color, if you've got any watermarks or things like that. Next on our list is additional graphs. We click on additional graphs. Here is where we can add overlays on top of the main chart. So we can have up to 4 different overlays. You press the add button and we can choose what we want. Add a share or index allows us to just overlay a fixed share. So if we select, for example, we've got Rio Tinto there, so we want to add Anglo-American. It asks us the type of line we want. I'll add a purple. And if I click on OK, here is the price of Anglo-American rebased to the price of Rio Tinto, so we can literally see how the two compare. The Anglo-American option is a global option, meaning that once we've added it, Anglo-American will appear on every chart. You can go back and remove it if you don't want it anymore. We do have other instruments that you can add. You can add the net asset value. That will only, of course, work with investment trusts. There's a shortcut here for FTSE 100. You can add other interesting things like the UK inflation, so you can see how the stock price is doing when rebased against inflation. And that's the end for the actual graph options. The rest of the options here are related to the share itself, so we can do things like add the share to the currently active portfolio or to a different portfolio. We can edit the shares, the alarms for the shares. We can look at any alarms that have triggered against the share. We can look at the company's broker forecast, directors' dealings, company dates, price list, dividend history, etc. And now all these options that I've gone through are available then as toolbar buttons. So if there's any particular feature that you use all the time or very often, you can add as a button here on the right hand side. I have some buttons here to, for example, the default ones will allow you to change from a line chart to a candlestick chart or bar chart or a candlestick chart. A toggle here for the linear or logarithmic scale. But if you do want to add particular features on the toolbar, quite simply go to Tools, Customize Toolbars. We select the graph bar, go to Buttons. Under Graph, here is a full list of all the buttons that we can add onto the chart. So for example, if we want to add there we go, Fibonacci lines, for example, we can add that, click on OK, and now we can click Fibonacci retracement. This is if you use Fibonacci retracement fairly often, so you don't have to constantly right click lines and text, etc. Now I've gone through all the options on the chart quite briefly, but if you want to look at anything in any particular detail, look at our help file, and as always, if you have any questions or feedback, give us a call on our support number, which is always appears here in the top right hand corner of the program, or send us an email at support@sharescope.co.uk. Well, thank you for listening, and goodbye.